Welcome. This is the Enlightenment Show, and I'm your host, Laurie Schoenfeld. This is where Chicken Soup for the Soul meets the artist way with Nancy Drew. Our guest today is Cheri Chesley, author of Concussion. We're going to be chatting with her today all about her new memoir and what things she's grateful for at this time in her life. Welcome, Cheri.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
I am very happy to have you joining us today and sharing your story as well. What are a few things that you are grateful for at this time in your life?
Oh, my family, my kids, my grandkids, my husband. When I said in the book that you just don't know what I put him through, I couldn't explain all of it. It was just a lot. I became a totally different person. And it's only recently that I realized just how much I had changed. But yeah, he's still here. He still says he's happy. So
we often forget it, the journey as we're in a partnership, in a marriage, a relationship, that when one person's going through something, the other person's going through it with you, just in a different way.
Yeah.
But they still are. Mm-hmm. Can you share with our listeners and viewers what Concussion is all about?
7 years ago, on August 1st, 2015, I sustained a head injury at work that completely changed my life. Everyone expected me to get better. I expected me to get better within just a few days or a few weeks. And I'm still experiencing headaches every day and confusion, difficulty with things that used to be easy.
Your concussion was a very unexpected way of having one. Can you tell us about that?
I worked cleaning banks overnight. And in bank buildings, they go through a lot of rubber bands and paper clips. And those do not get picked up by the vacuum cleaner. I don't know. I think a lot of people just assume that they do because they drop them on the floor. They don't worry about picking them up. So I was bending down while I was vacuuming. I bent down to pick up some paper clips and rubber bands. And when I straightened, I happened to be too close to the corner of the counter. And, in banks, they're like super fancy. So it's a marble countertop. And my head collided with that. And the countertop won.
Mm-hmm. So when you hit your head, what happened shortly after that?
I was dizzy, a little nauseated. It hurt, obviously, but it was after 1 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes you're just feeling like that because it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you've been working since 6. So I couldn't really tell what was concussion related, what was related to what actually happened to me, and what was just because I was tired. So I told my boss, I worked with my boss directly. So he asked me if I was okay. I told him that I was because I didn't have any indication to think that I wasn't. And we finished cleaning that bank. I drove the 30 miles closer to my house for the one building that I cleaned by myself because it's a much smaller branch. And I cleaned that. And then I went home. I looked at myself in the mirror to see if my eyes dilated and retracted. I thought, I've got this. I'm okay. I'm okay to go to bed. I seem to be fine. And I woke up and I did not have a headache until about 6 o'clock that evening. I was on a chat with some writer friends. And all of the sudden, my head hurt. I was going to throw up. I couldn't move. It hurt so much that I had to text my husband and say, "Can you please come in here?" Because I couldn't call him. I couldn't vocalize. So he took me to the ER that night, and that was when I had my first set of scans.
Mm-hmm. So from that point, Cheri, how did your life change from something that you thought was just, I hit my head, this is painful, and then the next day you're like, okay, there might be something there, to what you've been walking through?
Overnight, I couldn't tolerate sound, loud sounds, um, noises. That's the same thing. Light. So the house had to be completely dark, and we couldn't turn the volume up on anything very high. And at the time, my youngest was 11, and my oldest was in high school. So for them, that was a really big adjustment, and they really did very well with it. But I couldn't watch anything animated because it hurt my brain. I did develop a superpower though. Um, I can see CGI. It doesn't blend seamlessly into a scene anymore. I can see it. It stands out to me now,
Mm.
which I actually thought was kind of cool because my daughters would be like, "Okay, mom, which part of this isn't real?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's that."
We were talking before the show as well. You'd mentioned that even crying for you. Can you share with our listeners and viewers what crying does?
Crying, because crying naturally creates pressure in your head. It just aggravates my headache and makes it goes from this little background thing to being forefront and controlling. It's like going from zero to migraine, and that'll hang around for a day or two.
Mm-hmm.
So crying hurts, and it's not the release that it used to be.
Mm-hmm. What kind of things help you now, Cheri, since crying is not the release that it used to be? Are there things that have shifted for you that are your release now?
Um, Laughing has become a whole lot more important. It's no longer something that I take for granted. Um, I a lot of times I'm still working on this whole crying thing because a lot of times it just stays bottled up until it has to come out. I try to do it in controlled bursts where I'm just kind of letting the tears fall without the sobbing, because the sobbing is what really does it. And sometimes that works, but being able to talk to somebody is really great. It's hugely important. For a
Mhm.
long time, I didn't share a lot of what I was going through with Brian because it hurt him so much to know that I was in so much pain all the time. But now, I mean, it's been 7 years. We're used to it, I guess is what you would say. So I share a lot more with him, which is better all around.
Mm-hmm. So your new normal of what you've had to adapt to.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. The new normal is be wary of loud noises, try to avoid crowds, which is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
But we do live in a smaller town, so it's not as bad as it could be. Um, and then there's my leg, so I can't do a lot of standing, walking. I can't even do a lot of sitting, really.
Mm-hmm.
So
Are there things that help ease the pain that you're feeling within your head that you found has worked?
um, silence. It was a really, really long time before I could listen to music again, which music is a huge thing for me. I love music. But if I listen to something soft and soothing, that really helps. Silence and darkness, kind of like when you have a migraine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I have had some injections. They do, my neurologist does nerve blockers, like across here and in the back and on the sides. And I mean, if you're okay with getting a needle in your head 2, 4, 6, 8, 12 times, you know, but most of the time I do what I can to avoid triggers. When I can't avoid them, I just sort of ride the wave and try to get over it as easily as possible.
Mm-hmm. What day-to-day things can you walk us through that you used to be able to do as easy as breathing that are now struggles for you?
When I hit my head, I was eating right. I was walking 20 miles a week. I was, I would go to the track with my kids after school, and that was great time to spend with them. My twins, who were, well, 7 years, they were in their mid teens. They were like 15 at the time that it happened. So, um, the one did track and he did cross country. So he'd go and he'd try and improve his numbers. And the other one would walk with me. And sometimes even, I'm not a runner. I've had asthma my whole life. So I've never really been much of a runner. Um, and I was jogging a little bit there towards the end of the summer. And that was really big for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can actually do this. Running errands, I manage the kids' doctor's appointments, orthodontist appointments, dentist appointments. I'd go to the schools and I deal with that stuff. And just overnight, all of that just completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't leave the house. The only thing I did was go to my doctor and come back, and I had to have help to do that because I couldn't drive and I could barely walk. I was so dizzy all the time that I just needed someone to hang on to.
Has that shifted things for you cognitively as well as emotionally, Cheri?
Could you be a little bit more specific?
Yeah. So we'll go with the cognitively. If you are dizzy trying to process, organization, information, plotting stories, has that shifted for you?
Yeah. Yeah, I do it in shorter bursts. I'm a little bit better now. I mean, initially, I couldn't do it. I didn't write for 7 years.
Mhm.
But now I've healed enough that I can write, but I do have to be careful. I can't do the endless bursts of numbers and words that I used to do. This year, actually, I published Concussion and then I published Dearest One like the very next month. And I was writing those almost back to back. And then I had a really bad headache for like 3 weeks and I couldn't write at all.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a matter of pacing myself. And I'm still learning that particular, what I can do and what I can't do. It's a learning process from start to finish.
Mm-hmm. How's your life changed emotionally with learning to adapt and being homebound, and I'm sure at times being very misunderstood because you look fine, but you know that you have those invisible pains that people can't see?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have been judged. I've been judged by medical professionals. I've been judged by strangers, even family.
Mm-hmm.
It can't possibly be as bad as you think it is. But I have good people in my corner that really they believe me and they trust me, and like my family, they've seen it firsthand, so they know. They know that I wouldn't be doing this if I could do anything else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, my youngest daughter, actually, she was 11 when I hit my head, and last year she was diagnosed with PTSD. PTSD directly related to the trauma of my injury and what happened after. She experienced, she's in college now, and she experienced a friend of hers was having a difficult time. And she had a panic attack because she was helpless to do anything. And she's like, I was 11 years old again, and there wasn't anything I could do to help. And I'm like, that's a heavy thing. That's a heavy thing to say. What happened to me caused that for her, and it's going to be a long road for her now. So it's hard, but recognizing it, dealing with it, understanding it, those are all very important aspects of the entire process.
Mm-hmm. I'm wrapping you in a giant hug, Mama.
Thank
My
you.
mom heart. I mean, you do the best you absolutely can, and things definitely come up for your kids, whether you mean to or not. But that's still, you
Yeah.
feel it. You feel
Oh,
it.
you do. You absolutely feel it every time.
Yeah. Yeah. How has your perspective on life changed from 2015 when this happened to where you are right now?
It's completely different now. Um, I find a lot more joy in the everyday things. I think I'm a lot more patient with people. Not I'm still working on that whole being patient with yourself thing, but I'm a lot more patient with other people. I mean, in that time period, I became a grandmother. And that'll also do a whole lot to change your perspective. But I know because of the medications that I take and because of what's happened to me that um, however long I was going to live, I'm probably not going to live that long anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Facing my own mortality over and over and over again is incredibly humbling.
Mm-hmm.
So now I just focus on what good I can do while I'm here for however long I'm here.
Mm-hmm. There's a part in your book that I read 4 times because the line was so powerful. And it talks about how you've been falling, but you're getting better at learning to fall or knowing it's okay to fall. What kind of things have you learned on your journey about that concept of falling?
I used to be a perfectionist.
Mm.
I used to get caught up in this has to be just right. I'm learning that that's just not the case. It isn't true. Um, and I've had so many setbacks just in the last 7 years that if you're not figuring out a way around them or figuring out a way over them or through them or under them, then you're stagnant.
Mm.
And I think that being stagnant is probably the worst thing because for 8 months, I was stuck in the same place. I was either in my bed or I was on my couch or I was going to the doctor. I would try every once in a while, tagging along to pick the kids up or tagging along to go to the grocery store. Grocery store was hell on earth. I can't even imagine the panic, there's so many people, there's so much going on. My brain would not process all of the motion. And, being able to go to the grocery store on my own now is actually something that I do to relax, which is so weird. But I believe in the process of life a lot more now. It's the journey, it's the climb. And fall, okay, but it doesn't matter how many times you fall. What matters is how many times you get back up.
Mm.
And for me, that's been literal. But
I'm just soaking that in. Yeah. Of just getting back up, and that it's a journey of learning and experiencing. Also, I love how you talked about the grocery store, because I was going through those emotions and feelings as you were talking, of like, literally, there's so much happening, like you said, with noise and energy and movement. And like, I mean, for me, I definitely feel it in a different visceral way, but I can't even imagine with your experience how that would make everything else so much more heightened with your head.
Yeah. No, the first year really, and then again when I re-injured my head in the car accident, after that, it was overwhelming just to go to the grocery store. And that's something I used to be able to do in my sleep. In fact, I would enjoy late night trips to the grocery store when the kids were asleep and I didn't have to worry about taking anybody with me. I could get in and get out much faster. It's all about, and when you have when you have 5 kids, it's all about being efficient, just doing the things that you need to do as efficiently as possible. And I learned that that just isn't the case for me anymore. I have to slow down, take my time. I can't, if you give me a contract to read, any official document that's written in legalese or anything like that, my brain will not process that. It just won't. I can read. I can read fiction. I can read nonfiction. But you give me anything in legalese and I pore over it for 20 minutes and still have no clue what it says. I have to have someone interpret it for me. So when they say after a head injury, don't make any life altering decisions like buying a car, buying a house, part of that reason is because you can't understand what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah. You re-injured your head.
Yes.
So that part, like, I have to pause for a minute of how did you feel? Like, I'm sure just before you re-injuring your head from getting a concussion, there was a lot of anxiety, fear, emotions, all sorts of things going through you on a day-to-day basis. How did that change and amplify your situation?
Well, I had healed to the point where I was feeling actually pretty good. This was 2018. So it had been 3 years. And I felt like I was getting to a point where I could back off on some of the medications that I was taking and maybe do a little bit more, maybe expand my wheelhouse a little bit. And then I was on my way to my neurologist and I was rehearsing in my head what I'm going to say to get off of some of these meds because I just don't need them anymore. And I stopped at a stoplight and got rear-ended. And I knew within 5 minutes of the accident, by the way my head felt, by the symptoms that came up, that I had re-injured it. I jostled my brain around a little bit. So they had to take me in and scan it because when you're on blood thinners and you hit your head, if you do it sharply enough, there's a chance that you could create a blood clot in there, and it could create a bleed. And because you're on blood thinners, your blood's just thinner and it'll bleed more. And so my hematologist actually made me promise anytime I hit my head after that I would go and I would get scanned. So that's what I did. And it turned out, this is the funniest thing about it to me, is that none of my scans have ever shown anything wrong with my brain. And to go through all of this and have all the scans just be like, oh no, you're fine, is really, it's difficult because it is an invisible injury. And when it doesn't even show up on a CT scan or an MRI or anything, they know by my symptoms, they've seen me, most of the doctors know that this is what's going on. This is accurate. It's legitimate. But their scans are like She's fine. She'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And I think that's the most frustrating thing, because in the beginning I was like, it's just a little bump on the head, because none of the CT scans said that anything was wrong. So I expected any day that I would just wake up and I would be fine. For probably the first 4 or 5 months, I expected that to happen. I think the rule is that it takes about 6 months to recover from a head injury. So at that point, at 7 months, when I was still experiencing the same symptoms and I was still completely miserable, I was just, it was hard to face. I didn't know when it would end. And the unknown is still a very unpleasant thing for me.
And I can only imagine too, Cheri, there's a piece of feeling validated when you're having things that are happening to you physically and being able to see it and have people be like, oh yes, this is what you've been talking about.
Yes.
Validation and that missing piece is a whole nother emotional area of turmoil, not having that.
Because you actually start to question yourself. Are my symptoms really as bad as I think they are? Can I do more? How can I possibly be as miserable as I am with clear scans when everything looks normal? So you actually, you second guess yourself. You try to push yourself harder than you should. You want to believe that it's okay, but we have to be gentle with ourselves. We have to understand that there are limitations.
You write fiction and novels as well. How was your experience writing a memoir different from writing fiction?
I actually really enjoyed it. The funny thing is you do just as much research writing a memoir, even though you lived through everything. You still have to research to get your dates accurate and your timeline accurate, which that was actually kind of interesting because I'd chronicled so much on Facebook that I just sort of went back on that and I was going through my Facebook. This is my research. But I have tried to be transparent through my entire process. I want people to understand that this is something that happens and it can happen to anyone. And writing the memoir, at first I did not want to do it. I remember hobbling to the doctors in those first weeks and telling Brian, I am not writing about this. I am not writing about this. It took more than 5 years before I came to terms with the fact that I needed to. For me, for anyone who might also be struggling with this, for anyone who thinks concussions are no big deal. I mean, I know that they got a lot of concussions, got a lot of press a few years back when they were talking about it in the professional football community. But I am not an athlete. It can happen to anyone. And I needed people to know that you could be going about your life and 1 second, one choice, one misstep can change it completely.
We have a comment coming in. Brandon, your mom, love you. Thank you for joining us, Brandon.
Brandon is my oldest. When I first hit my head, he stepped up. He started taking the other kids to school. He did the majority of the driving when Brian was at work. Brandon was a real trooper. And then he left to serve a church mission. And so when the second part of everything that happened, he wasn't here. And that was really hard for him. Mm-hmm. But he's been amazing. I'm really proud of him.
Good job, Brandon. It's a team effort for sure.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. We're going to turn it to the inner child question segment. Are you ready, Cheri?
Sure.
Okay. First question. What did you like to collect when you were a kid?
Unicorns.
Why unicorns?
I think there's a part of me that has always believed in magic, and unicorns are an obvious manifestation of magic.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that they were really neat. They were rare, they were beautiful, and I wanted them.
Holding that magic, yes. Mm-hmm. Second question. When you were a teen, what was your favorite thing about Thanksgiving break?
Oh, not having school. No, because I didn't actually enjoy going to the big family dinner very much. It's a lot of people. I've always been kind of introverted. And it just seemed really stressful for the people who were doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of, I wasn't that big on the whole food thing. So yeah, I was getting out of school. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Were there things that you like to do in your free time with not being in school?
Actually, by the time I was a teenager, I was writing in my free time. I wrote actually my first book when I was 14.
Okay, and what is your first book that you wrote at 14?
Actually, it is the first draft of the first book I published, The Peasant Queen.
Oh, that's amazing.
So it took 20 years to make it pretty, but yeah.
Bravo. Okay, so did you have a space, Cheri, that you like to write, or did you just wherever you possibly could, you would write?
Oh, I wrote everywhere. At the end of class, I had my writing with me all the time. So at the end of class, if I finished the assignment early, which I usually did, I'd have 10 or 15 minutes at the end to just write, which I would. I wrote during lunch. When I was home, I'd just go into my room and I'd work on it. Home wasn't a good place to concentrate because there was a lot going on. So sometimes I'd go to the library. I did a lot of walking when I was a teenager. I was out of the house a lot, just being in the neighborhood. I'd go this way to the library or McDonald's or Walgreens. I'd go that way and it's a grocery store. I'd go that way and it's neighborhoods, just whatever I needed to do. Sometimes I'd go to the park, but a lot of times after I told my friends what I was doing and shared with them, they would be with me when I wrote. They wanted to know more. They wanted to hear the story. And so I was telling the story as I was writing it, which was really fun. It's a really interesting way to get a story out of you because you're basically storytelling, which is an organic thing. And it's something that humanity's been doing for thousands of years. And I enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm. Third question. What is the oddest food combo that you've liked and tried or you've just tried?
I'm not super adventurous when it comes to food. My husband keeps begging me to try chocolate dipped bacon, and I'm just not into it. But honestly, I can't think of anything.
What's your go-to dish then, Cheri, that is like your comfort dish that you pick every time?
Oh, I love Alfredo, chicken Alfredo.
Mm-hmm.
It's good stuff.
Mm-hmm. That is a good comfort dish for sure.
Yes.
Got like the cream and pasta always just feels nice.
No, it does.
Yeah.
And recently, we've been making it with penne pasta, which is, I don't know if anybody else knows this. They probably do, but it's magical because the sauce gets in the little pasta, and then you're eating the pasta, and you get this squish of sauce in your mouth, and it's fantastic. So yeah.
It's like it's got more of the cream filling inside of the.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. I have never thought of it that way, but now that you say that, I'm like, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. That's the extra. That's why it feels like there's extra, because it's hidden
Yes.
in the noodle.
It's something that you don't really think about, but when somebody brings it up, oh yeah, huh?
Before we end today, Cheri, what advice can you give our listeners and viewers on living a creatively abundant life?
I think the best advice is be patient with yourself. You're not going to get it right the first time, and that's okay. It's not a competition. You can stumble as long as you pick yourself up and you keep going.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure to chat with you and to read Concussion.
Thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. Where can our listeners and viewers find you if they have any questions after the show or want to find Concussion?
All of my books are available on Amazon, so that's easy. For me, I have an author page on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, but I have on Facebook, I have my regular page and my author page, so it's easy to find me that way.
And we'll put all the links down below for an easy access to find Cheri. And before we end, we have a beautiful comment from Brian saying that he loves you, Cheri.
I love you too.
Thank you so much for everyone who has joined us live and will join us on the replay. Remember, as you go about the rest of your week, to find the things that are working within your life. You are the creator of your own story. What steps will you take next? Have a beautiful week. For those who celebrate Thanksgiving, enjoy. I'm sending you much love, and we're grateful for you every single week. Thank you again, Cheri, for being here, and we'll see you right here next Monday at 10 o'clock a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cheri.
Bye.